Okay, so welcome back to the second part here. Let me start sharing again. All right, so hi, everybody's back with me?
Yes, sir.
Right, good. Okay, so we are picking up now and we're actually starting to introduce the relational leadership model that, welcome back, Josiah. The relational leadership model that we are going to be spending a lot of time evaluating and going through. So as I said before, the relational leadership model focuses a lot on psychological and educational frameworks that came up from these three guys that we talked about here, the psych and soc backgrounds that we were talking about before. And it will focus on us learning about ourselves. And you can see that in your assignment on the self-assessment. You need to understand who you are and why you are the way you are. Self-awareness in the context of others. There's a presentation, a chapter, understanding others that you're going to be paying attention to. And you're also going to be evaluating your own value systems and your ethical values and so on as part of the process of coming to grips with this program that we're looking at. In the development of your journey through the program is going to call upon us to engage in self-awareness, effective listening, collaboration, compromise, and practice. Now, self-awareness is something that's going to take time to accomplish unless you constantly reflect on your situation and looking like that, looking backwards in your life and trying to assess the influences in your life. That's something that's going to come up. Yes, Josiah.
Sir, I'm not seeing the screen, sir.
Again, Murray. Others are seeing the screen.
Yes, sir.
All right, so let me stop and start again. It seems as if when you join late, it causes that problem, Josiah. How's that there now, Josiah?
Yeah, come up now.
All right, okay, cool. All right, so I wanted to ask a question, Josiah. Maybe you could respond to this question. Um, what what is it? What to use effective listening?
Effective listening. Like when you're able to gather the information for something and I can
Well,
understand what the person's saying.
right. Okay, good. How do you go about doing that?
I paying attention.
All right.
Having knowledge, some sort of knowledge on the topic the person talking about.
Okay, there's a bit of a danger with that because one of the things, and I don't know if people have ever experienced this, when somebody is speaking to you about something of a personal nature to them, we listen to them and we start to respond quickly. I kind of did that with Josiah just now there. Um, because we are listening with a framework of information that is in our brain already. So if we have a position about a particular issue, let's say we're speaking about gender fluidity, you might have your own personal issue when it comes to the issue of the varying levels of gender. Um, I want to refer to this as well, gender spectrum that we speak that is spoken about now. And because you may have a particular perception, what happens is that we begin to put what the individual has in mind in the context of what we already know. So that's the past information Josiah was talking about. And we begin to stop listening because we've already started to evaluate and assess what the person is saying. Now, it means, therefore, that we run the risk of not truly understanding the issue that the person is talking to you about. And that can create a problem later on. Because if we cannot effectively listen and we have our own internal boundaries, then we cannot effectively collaborate or compromise with individuals. And we have to, the reason why the word practice is down here is we have to be practicing effective listening. Now, there's a whole module on effective listening in communication programs. Um, I don't know if you guys do it, but I know in the media program they talk about it in terms of the guidelines for effective listening. But it takes time and it takes practice to be able to put aside your own personal preferences and listen effectively to people, especially people you don't like. An exercise I used to do with one of my classes in the past when I taught communication was that I'll bring different forms of music with messages in it, and you'd be surprised how many people are quite willing to listen to the music that they like, but when you put on music that they don't like, their listening becomes very poor. They stop hearing the messages that are being sent in the music because they're so affronted by the nature of the music that they're listening to. And this is something that I usually do to illustrate the issues that we face whenever we're communicating with other people. If we like somebody, it's far easier to listen to them than if we have a distaste for the individual or the position that they've taken. So once we have that disagreement sitting in our minds, it becomes problematic. And therefore, one of the things that we ought to do is to learn to listen to people, especially when they are confronting us with things that we don't like. That's something that you have to practice. This is especially true in relationships because fine, you're in love with somebody, but when they've done something or say something you don't like, it becomes very hard on both sides of the situation to actually listen effectively to each other. And a lot of conflict in your life might actually be avoided if you were to practice this type of effective listening. Um, I don't know how you all feel about it. Miss Alaha, how you feel about that? I wonder if Kalisha is here.
So I'm here.
You're here, all right. Have you ever experienced that automatic block in your brain when you're listening to somebody sometimes?
Yeah.
All right. Has it ever happened with somebody that you're having a relationship with and you feel you want to strangle them?
So I can't answer that.
Why you might get in prison? You'll
No,
be in
sir.
trouble.
No, no. I have not been in a relationship, sir.
Oh, but it doesn't have to be a relationship only with um, a, a romantic relationship. It could be a relationship in which you're talking to your parents or you're talking to your siblings or family members.
Yes, sir. That happens all the time.
Right, and that's so like your mom is saying something to you or your dad is saying something to you that you absolutely detest, and what you've effectively done is you've stopped listening to them. Um, those are probably the people that you need to practice the most amount of effective listening with, because they annoy you. um, a technique you can use to deal with that is find radio stations that either play music or have talk shows that host people you don't like, their positions on things, and try to listen to what they have to say, and not judge what they're saying, but just listen to what they say, understand their point of view and why they may be feeling the way they are feeling. That's the challenge that you have, because that's what you're going to have to develop in any leadership program. For this particular one in particular, you're going to have to learn to listen to people, because as you interact with them, you're going to realize that their vision or perception of how things are going to be is absolutely different to what you want. All right, now some other principles that they found that this leadership program has, and it starts with the first one. Leadership is something that concerns us all. And I know at young ages, teenager and even before, we don't really think about it as being important because, especially when we talk about political leadership and influential people in our societies and whatnot, we don't think about it. That's them people think. The fact of the matter is that the decisions that these leaders make have almost direct impact upon us, and therefore it should concern us all. But it concerns us at different times and at different levels, and that is something that we also have to appreciate. That when you come across different people, what is important to you is not necessarily going to be important to them, and you have to also bring that to bear. But the whole concept of leadership is still something that's important for us to all develop an appreciation for at all levels of our lives. And that brings us to the second point, that leadership is viewed and valued differently by everybody. So that we need to learn to appreciate that people see things differently, and we have to make sure we adjust to that. And we'll come to that perception issue in a little bit. That leadership is not static, it's flexible. That the nature of leadership changes over time, and sometimes it changes within moments. All right, because the next point, different situations will call on different types of leadership styles. So, for example, when you're dealing with with children, for example, you might want to use a more stringent style or more autocratic style of leadership because you have to instill in that individual some form of discipline. And believe it or not, like yourselves as young adults, when you become parents, you will be doing the last one. That leadership is something that can be learned and developed. As a parent, you'd start to understand that you are a leader in the household, and therefore you will learn to and develop leadership skills along the lines, and you will be using different types of systems of leadership. So right now, for example, Kalisha, you might have, what type of leadership style have you been exposed to by your parents? Feel free, hopefully they're not listening to you, but feel free to contribute if you can. What about Aaron? Kalisha's still waiting on you too, or even Nyla for that matter. Or Selena.
Can you repeat the question?
I want to know how are the people in your household related to you, and what type of leadership style are they using with you? Now, this is primarily, I was asking Kalisha because I guess she's still a young adult living at home. I don't know what your circumstances are. Are you running a household, or are you in a household where you're a dependent or a contributing dependent?
I live with my great grand. So
Right? And she comes from a different school of thought, right?
mhm. Yep.
Okay. Now, you're living with your great grand. Do you have your own children, or
So I
are
don't.
you? Sorry?
So I don't.
Okay. So it means when you're living with somebody else and under their roof, they're kind of in charge, right?
Yep.
Right. So what style of leadership does your grandparent use with you?
That's right.
If you were to describe it, is it authoritative? Is it democratic in nature?
Not sure, Just
I'll let you know. You don't really have to answer the question because you need time to evaluate what you're living in. All right, and it
yes.
takes time to do that. But you understand that leadership is around us all the time, in various forms and fashions, and therefore it takes time for us to evaluate it and understand that we too can learn, and we do learn from the leadership that is around us. Our first leaders around us are our parents and older siblings in a lot of instances. If you're in that type of situation, you seem to be in a multi-generational household. And that generation gap can also create some sort of issues for you in terms of the nature of the leadership, because there's certain um, types thinking that takes place from one generation to another. All right, so another foundation set of principles that is utilized for this leadership programs is that in this program is going to ask you to be committed to very high ethical standards and encourages you to make positive changes and be socially responsible. Now we'll come back to social responsibility in a little while. Now, in order to maintain, or the reason why we need the highest ethical standards and social responsibilities, because we need you to be critical thinkers. We need you to have credibility, authenticity, integrity, and high ethical or good ethical conduct. So critical thinking means that we're able to look at situations from an objective point of view and make decisions about how to behave, act, or do things with the information that is at hand to make that decision. And that critical thinking process is something that most of our programs try to instill in people. Don't make rash decisions. Make decisions based upon the information that you have at hand. Critical thinking is a very important element of decision making. And the decisions that you make affect the relationships that you develop, both as leaders and subordinates in organizations. You want to have credibility, which means what you do has to be based upon known information, knowledge, and so on. You can't be guessing, and in this circumstance you make this choice, and in another time you make a different choice, but the same situation. So credibility lends itself to authenticity and integrity, that there's a consistency to be a behavior. That consistency is believable by others, and people then trust you, and you develop integrity and credibility with other people. And all of that is bounded by your ethical values. So those are the things that are cornerstone elements that we will develop further as we start to move through the program, but they're important elements that they're looking at. In the process of developing the leadership model and in yourselves, it starts with the first of three basic principles. The first is knowing. The knowing element is know yourself, know how changes occur, know how and why others may view things differently than you do. So we already spoke about coming to grips with who you are. And that's part of the exercises that you're going to be engaging in the program. How changes occur, understand why things occur the way they do occur, and then why others may view things differently than you do. So with that in mind, let's take a look at this image here. So this is where I need you all to participate. What do you see here?
So I see two ladies
Uh-huh.
and a skull.
All right. So is it two ladies you're seeing, or are you seeing, can you be more specific about the two ladies that you're seeing?
Uh, oh no, I think that's a reflection. Just now watching it properly.
Right, good. Okay, and you can see that skull, right?
Yeah.
All right, good. So that's you. All right, and I don't know who you is. I'm gonna make this picture a little smaller. Can
Funny though.
everybody else see what she saw? You could if you
Yes.
can't, yeah, if you can't, you can put your hand up if you can. So you guys are seeing that there, right? You're seeing the
Yes.
skull, right? If you back up a little bit, and you see where like all where the makeup things are there, it looks like the teeth and the skull kind of stuff. All right, and excellent. Let's look at the next photo. What do you see here?
Is it the back of someone's head?
Where say something real more specific about the someone?
A lady, I think.
Yeah, what direction is she looking?
To the left.
Right? Over her shoulder kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
All right. Everybody else is seeing that?
Yes, sir.
Yeah? All right. Let me ask a question. Anybody seeing an old lady looking down?
No.
You sure? Nobody can see an old lady looking down? Close your eyes, squint a little bit inside, and then come back and look at it. See if you see an old lady looking down. This is the chin of the old lady. This is her mouth. This here is her nose. This is one of her eyelashes poking out there. This is the other eye there. This is the front of her hair. This is a head, like a scarf over her head. And this is like a jacket that she's wearing, or a fur coat or something. You all seen that yet?
Yes, sir.
I'm still not seeing it.
You're still looking? All right, go ahead, look. Think about this as one of her eyes here. And she's looking downwards, as opposed to the lady looking over her shoulder. Um, with this being the eye, this being her ear, and this here being her chin, and this being some kind of, those choker things that people wear sometimes, like a necklace or something, and all this just being like a veil that she's wearing over her head. You all
I'm seeing
understand?
it now.
Seeing it now? All right, good. Everybody else is seeing the old lady and the young lady? People are seeing this. These are perception exercises, and what it really tells you is that when and in some psychology tests they say the first thing you see is what tells you something about yourself. um, I've seen these so often. I can see the images um, easily, both the images, but there are other tests that you can do along these lines, and it kind of tells you something about who you are. But more importantly, I'm forcing you to have to look for the older woman, because I need you to remember that other people will view things differently than you. And this last one here, this is straightforward. Why is each person saying what they're saying when the item sitting down in front of them is clearly neither? Right? The whole point about it is that the only way for you to understand the other person's perception and the characterization we have in front of us is to go over on their end and look at it. And this is the point I'm trying to make. When you're trying to deal with the issue of understanding why other people see things differently, you have to literally walk a mile in their shoes or walk a mile in their skin to be able to know what their life is like, to be able to understand why they perceive things the way they do. Now, the greatest thing that you can do in life is not judge people, but understand people. Because if you understand them, then it leads to less conflict. You don't necessarily have to agree with their position, but I would always recommend you try to understand why they think the way they do, or why they feel the way they do. All right, you don't have to agree with what they do and how they think, but you just need to understand them, because that gives you a level of it gives you the ability to be able to move beyond the immediate conflict that you're looking at. Because these two guys could keep on shouting 6 and 9 at each other all day long, until one person walks across the thing and looks at it the way the other person is. That makes sense, guys? All right, so the second level of activity we talk about here, the knowing part starts. The next part is the being part. So we know we need to understand ourselves. We know we need to, if we go back there, we know we have to know ourselves. We know we need to know how change occurs, and we have to know why other people see things differently. But now we have to follow through with that. We have to be ethical, principled, open, caring, and inclusive. Now, ethical is something we're going to examine in more detail. Ethicals and principles are related because one drives the other, so to speak. But what about being open, caring, and inclusive? What does that mean to you? I'm trying to get Aaron in on the discussion, but he seems to be having problems. So, Chanel Morris, what do you understand by the concept of being open, caring, and inclusive?
Well, I guess you have to be willing to listen to
Yes.
people, willing to take in their information. Caring is what do this. We have to do that every day. You have to be kind and caring to people. You have to consider their feelings.
Right.
And well, inclusive, yeah. You include them, you don't just leave them out, you include them into
The
whatever
activities that you're doing.
exactly
Right,
the
good.
activity.
Okay, so that sounds nice and sounds good. Yes, and I think you understand what it means, but how easy do you think it would be?
It's not very easy. I don't think it'll be very easy.
Why not?
Because most times when we say something, when we as people say something, we expect everybody to just,
Agree to,
okay, yeah, that's what it's supposed to be.
and that's because we're limited only to our perception of what the world looks like.
Yeah.
Right, and see, I understand now. Inclusivity, openness, and caring means we have to open ourselves up to positions, ideas, and concepts that are absolutely alien to us, and those ideas that we don't like will also come into play as well. So it makes it a challenge for us to be this way. And Richard Branson said this really well. You have to be a caring leader because you can't be a good leader unless you care about people, unless you like them. I'm not telling you have to love somebody, but you have to actually show genuine admiration for individuals that you're working with, regardless of what they bring to your table. All right. And this these days it's even more challenging to deal with that given the diametric positions that people are taking in terms of a lot of things around them. So that too, as a leader, is going to be a challenge that you have to surmount. The last element or the third principle in this developmental process, we have the knowing, all right, which we started with the knowing here, the being, and now we have the doing. So we have to follow through now with our belief structure. We know we have to act in a social responsible way. We have to be consistent and congruent in our behavior, which means in every circumstance that some particular type of thing happens, we consistently approach it, and in all parts of our lives, we behave in the same way. We can't be one thing in the public and another in private. It actually has to be congruent because, the old people have no say. What happens in the dark does eventually come in the light, right? And this is in particular as you interact with your community, with the people in your community. And it also will show itself in the commitments that you have, be it relationships, jobs, whatnot, and in the passions that you have in life. How many of you all have any kind of passion in life? What is a passion, by the way? Just out of curiosity, not necessarily. Just want to get a feel for if you understand what they mean in the text when they talk about passions. What are you, if anything, passionate about? I had a conversation earlier with, who was it, about changing class, but she fell off the classroom. About encouraging her to go and do some photography as an elective option that she could take. Jada, what are you passionate about in life?
Animals. I love animals.
Right. Okay. So, and this is any animal.
Mostly dogs.
All right. So good. So, how do you engage in that passion? Do you have your own animals? Own dog?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
I'm really committed to my dog.
Right. And what about other people's dogs?
Yeah. I really just anytime is this excitement to see
Yeah.
animals or pets.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. What field of study are you in?
Again, radiography.
All right. Do you think you could branch off into veterinarian science? If you,
Maybe in the future, if
uh,
yeah, if
okay.
fate allows it.
Okay, that's good. That's good because that's a passion. And y- the thing about it is, I've found if you are passionate about the things that you do for employment, you'll actually become a better person in that field than you would be because you really have to like what you do, and well, not just like, you have to love what you do. All right. So, Ms. De Leon, in the business that you're doing, are you passionate about the fashions and designs that you distribute or sell?
Yes,
Huh? What type of fashion and designs are you involved in selling to other people?
Um, I wouldn't say all because I don't do like wedding dresses and prom dresses and these things. So it's more casual, everyday parties,
All right.
dinner looks, and these kind of things.
All right. That sounds good because interestingly enough, you have a wider sale parameter for that because people would tend to buy more casual outfits and stuff like that than they would in their lifetime buy formal attire. All right, I can count the number of suits I have, for example. Whereas in terms of t-shirts and jeans and stuff like that, I can't even remember how many of those I have. So you're in a good area there, good thing. Now we talked about social responsibility. Check this out here. What does social responsibility mean? It means that whatever you're doing, you need to act in a manner that positively impacts the society and the community that you work and live in. So although you are pursuing profit generation, Mr. Leon, you should strive in a way that it positively impacts upon your society that you engage with, the community that you engage with. That's what social responsibility is in its broader setting is going to be. And it's something that you want to pay attention to. All right. Now, continuing with the basic principles of the developmental leadership process. Now, although we had this three-stage knowing, being, doing element, the fact is that leadership still cannot be reduced to a number of just these do A, then B will follow, and so on. We have to recognize that leadership is a breedable thing. It changes, it morphs into different things. It's realistic, it develops a way of thinking. So when we start to get involved with this, it should help with you, it should develop a new pathway of knowledge that will help to develop a way of thinking about things. It will help you to develop a personal philosophy of how you view leadership, and you start to gauge the leadership around you through that lens, which can be difficult because sometimes the lens in which you develop makes the leadership that you see around you look less than what you want to see envisioned in the model that we have. And it will clearly start to bring up what is important to you in terms of what are your core values, um, that would help you work or not work with others. So the idea is that you want to identify core values that help you work better or well or successfully with other people in achieving the change that you have in mind. So anybody in this class here is part of a social community group in your community, in your communities. Now, your communities can be the community around your home, the community around your religious observances, communities in your school, or your communities in work. So those are 4 different communities you can be involved in, or even if you have some virtual community that you participate in as well. Anybody here is in any virtual communities? Well, you're in here one now. You're in this one now, so this is a virtual community we're in a classroom, but it's envisioned in a virtual sense, but it's online in your school environment. But are any of you all active in any sort of um, social activities in your life? Church groups, youth groups, temple groups, depending upon your religious persuasions? No? That's the drawback with virtual worlds, huh? No members of teams, participate in activities with others in different environments. Something to think about, guys. If you're not, you probably need to think about moving in that direction. All right, so we have something called a paradigm. A paradigm is a way of looking and viewing the world. And we have the paradigm of hard work fixing our problems. That's something I was always taught when I was growing up, that you need to work hard to achieve the goals that you want in life. This text is telling us, or this process is telling us, that hard work paradigm or way of treating with your objectives and goals in life is simply, in our modern world, simply a too simplistic approach to things. And what they encourage is the concept of working smarter, not just harder. And when they say work smarter, they are referring to collectively smarter, reflectively smarter, and spiritually smarter. Now, to clarify each of these, collectively smarter is very simple. If we have 10 people in a room trying to solve a problem, there are 10 sets of data that can be utilized to solve the one solution. If one person took it upon themselves to try to solve that one problem, only their knowledge base will be utilized as the information base to make the solution or design the solution. But if we have collectively 10 different people from different walks of life coming together to look at the same problem, they can bring different perspectives to share and much more information than any one individual can. That's why the statement, all of us are smarter than one of us, makes perfect sense, which is one of the reasons why the college encourages group activities in assessment and evaluation, because we want you to experience for yourself that collectively you can do more than individually. And I hope you get to appreciate that. But the model itself here speaks to that same concept. Secondly, reflectively smarter. Take the time to make meaning out of what is happening in order to gain perspective and understanding. That is, take time to look back on what you've done right and what you've done wrong. We have a tendency when we're looking back, we only tend to look back when things go wrong, but we should also look back when things go right, because just as much as we need to avoid mistakes we've made in the past, we also have a tendency to ignore what we did right. And that's something that we should pay attention to as well. And unfortunately, a lot of us do not reflect, and we continue to do the same things over and over again, expecting that we will be successful, which is by definition insanity. Because if you continue doing the same thing over and over, expecting different results, then you are bound to repeat your failures of the past. All right. If, however, you've reflected on what you did and make adjustments and changes, then you're going to probably be more successful moving forward. So that's what this model is trying to tell us. Look at your past experience and evaluate it from an objective manner to be able to make better future decisions moving forward. And we could do that both individually and collectively as well. All right, now spiritually smarter has nothing to do with our religious beliefs, but it has to do with what we value, our values, our beliefs, and the principles that guide our behaviors. And if you ever want to know what are the core values that you hold, look at how you behaved when you were in a bad situation. This is what I mean by rough waters or white waters. What did you do and how did you behave when things were going wrong? Now, I can't, that has to do with some degree of reflection as well. Think about when things were down, when things were going wrong, and what were you willing to do based upon your beliefs and your values and your principles that you would not probably do in smoother water situations or when things are going well. Is when things go bad that your true character comes out. That's what a lot of people speak about. And that's what they're talking about here, being spiritually smarter, which is being aware of those things that guide your base behaviors when you're alone and when you're in a rough place. So you need to evaluate yourself in relation to this, because this is a critical element here. Because if when things go wrong, you're willing to lie and cheat and steal, then spiritually you need to be aware of the fact that you have those issues to deal with, and you need to probably make some adjustments. Because if things are going right and you don't behave in that manner, then likely what is likely to happen is that you're living two kind of lives. You're being very deceitful, more so to yourself than anybody else, and you want to pay attention to aligning your ethical values to something that is more amenable to the world around us, kind of situation. And it can be very simple things, and I'm not talking about killing people and shooting and stealing them, but simple things like you know you you're in a rough situation and you treat people badly because you are upset. So think about it from that perspective. How your treatment of people change based upon your emotional position at any point in time. So that's something that you want to bear in mind when you're talking about. Evaluate yourself in terms of your behavior when things are bad, because it really speaks to who you are as an individual. I'm asking you to do something there that you may not like to see, but think about it, guys, because more often than not, your true self comes out when you are annoyed. All right. So we talked about paradigms. Paradigms are patterns and ways of looking at things in order to make sense of them. So the question would be, what is your current leadership paradigm? This is something that you need to reflect on. What do you think of leadership? Now, I can't answer this question because I've done this program with students for so many times that I'm always reevaluating leadership on a regular basis and my potential in that. But you need to think about how you feel about leadership currently in your mindset. And if the question that you need to ask yourself is, the current patterns of leadership around you and around us all as a society, are they working? Are they finding solutions to the problems that we as a society or a country have, or as a world? Are we correcting things? Are we making things better? And the answer to that is really no. If we are looking at a situation and where we are not seeing solutions coming up, then it signals to us that we need to start thinking about leadership differently. So it speaks to the need for what is referred to as a paradigm shift. That's a big word that people like to use. In fact, it doesn't even look like paradigm, it looks like paradigm, which is how some people pronounced it and got into a lot of flack about it. But the G is obviously is silent in this spelling. But a paradigm shift means that we have to let go of the past and look at moving forward in a different way. Now, this is one thing that the paradigm shift, this leadership model is gonna bring to us is that leadership is not something that a leader possesses as much as it is a process of involving followership. Now, if we think about this actually makes sense. Because if as a leader, we aren't able to motivate the people around us to assist us in achieving the goals that we have identified as a leader, be it in the form of an organization, like a business, and it's some business, or to a social grouping or even a classroom, then how are we going to get how are we going to achieve anything if we can't motivate the others involved? Well, it therefore means that leadership cannot operate without its followership. They go hand in hand. So the turnaround to that is followership is really leadership in action among people in groups. So followership is a focal point now of leadership studies. What are followers? How do they behave? Why or how should they be behaving? So let's look at this. These are the follower types that that this model here, Potter and the others, have been able to develop here. You have a matrix here that's measuring the relationship initiative. That's the ability of the individuals to develop positive relationships, and the performance initiative, that is to achieve the goals and objectives of the organization. So as we move from low to high along each axis, we have a partner. Partners are those that have high performance and high relationship initiatives, which mean that they are good at both aspects of the requirements within group activities in particular. As opposed to a partner, you have a subordinate who's low both on performance and relational initiatives, and therefore they are going to have a lot of problems getting anything done or communicating and developing relationships with others within a group. And that simply means that as a leader, you're going to have to focus a lot of attention on working with a subordinate if they're the only type of individuals in your organization. Now, as opposed to the partner and the subordinate, you have a contributor. A contributor is somebody who's very good in doing the work. That's performance initiative. But they're really poor in communicating and maintaining and developing positive relationships with others. So it means that your job as a leader is to work on them, with them, to be able to help develop their relational initiative, or leave them in this little box here and give them performance related activities and reduce the amount of relational activities that they need to be engaged in. Because if you think about it from the perspective of a group presentation, for example, contributors are the people who are willing to do the research, do the paperwork, type up the documents, format the things. They're really good with doing the work, but they don't like the standing up in front of the class and presenting. A partner is comfortable with both. They can do all the work and do all the presentation. The subordinate is just like a sponge, basically. They just want to sit there and do nothing and say nothing. You don't want these kind of individuals in a group, obviously. The politician, on the other hand, is high relational but low performance. So they have really good communication skills and they're really good at reaching out, networking, and speaking and being knowledgeable, but they have very poor performance skills. It means they probably lack the ability to do appropriate research. They don't have the writing skills or the formatting skills to be able to work on documents and research and so on. But if you are a leader in a situation, and these are the types of individuals that you have following you, and you can't, it takes time to take a politician and train them in performance elements, a contributor, and train them in relational elements. And you have to work in a quick forum time to be able to get this kind of thing done. Then what you're going to end up doing is knowing that you'd have to choose the activities that they get involved with to best benefit your group potentials. So your contributors will be given all the work to do. The subordinates will be forced into working with these individuals, and the politicians will be given all the presenting and speaking and reaching out type of activities that are required, and the combinations thereof. You would utilize partners would be people you could split off and say, hey, you take charge of this piece and I will take charge of that piece, and then we'll bring things together overall. If you think about that, ask yourself this question: where do you fall in this category if you were to assess yourself as a in group work that you've done in the past? Have you been partners, contributors, politicians, subordinates? Now, I don't expect that you'd willingly share that with us, but think about where you fall in that type. I see this all the time in groups. A lot of people, they're really good at doing the work, but they're really bad at presenting, and they don't like to present. And as a group, as a leader, you have to be able to know what the strengths and weaknesses of your people are and employ them. One of the problems that most leaders have with partners is that partners can be very threatening to your position as a leader. And that's something you also have to engage in as well and understand that. Because that means the partner is just as good as you are, possibly. Or maybe you as the leader are more politician than a performance driven. But generally leaders tend to have to be more of a partner in terms of their skill levels. Now, this is in a very small initiative, but this is another type of follower system that was set up by this person here, and I identified this in the context of political parties. So, as a leader in a political party, you're surrounded by a number of types of followers. You have loyalists, sycophants, critics, opportunists, spectators, traitors, and realists. You have to be able to classify the people in your organization into the various categories, just like we talked about before, where you can pull them into politician, partner, subordinate, and coordinate. Contributor. You also have, because in political parties, these are a little more critical. Your critics are useful because they can give you critical evaluations of things, but they're always going to be critical. Sycophants you have to be wary of because they're only there they're only there because you're in a position of power. If you're not in a position of power, they're not going to be around. Opportunists are very similar to sycophants, except that they're only there because there's an opportunity they see that you can give to them. So they're there primarily for what they want. Spectators are there, they're not doing anything, all they're doing is watching. They're just there they're not even there for bed, they're just watching. Traitors are there to turn you. They're there particularly to trip you up and to create a situation where you're likely to become sabotaged by their behaviors. So you have to watch out for these individuals. Loyalists and realists are also useful as well. Your loyalists are those people who will follow you regardless. That's like ride or die friends kind of situation that you have. And realists are people who will, unlike critics who will only tell you all the bad things, realists will be able to tell you objectively what is good and what is bad. And they will give you good responses. Loyalists can be too loyal to a fault, that they would ignore all your negative values and only and say they will support you regardless. But a realist is somebody who would be there and tell you, hey, you're doing rubbish or you're doing well, that type of stuff. So again, a different lens in which we can look at the same situation, and it gives us a little more insight into the types of individuals that you're going to encounter in these organizations as a leader, in terms of the types of followers that you're going to come up. So what are the responsibilities of followers? From the text in the model, because of the importance of followers, they have identified the responsibilities and the competencies that they do. So in terms of responsibilities, they have to offer support to the leader, which is normal, get things done. Take initiative, which means you don't have to wait. You don't have to wait to be told to do something. That you see something that needs to be done, or you anticipate things to be done, you take initiative and work on it. Play counselor and coaching roles to both other followers as well as the leader. Counsel the leader when they need counseling, both in terms of how to approach things, if things are going wrong, that kind of stuff, and coaching them on things they're not aware of or they have a lack of knowledge about. Raise issues and concerns when necessary. So these two are very similar in that sense. And a lot of leaders don't like these counseling, coaching, and raising issues, because that sometimes shakes their authority as a leader, and they may feel a bit threatened by it. Seek and encourage honest feedback. This is also something that a lot of followers will will like to do, but oftentimes poor leaders or immature leaders have problems with. Clarify your role and expectation. So as a follower, it is your duty to find out, well, what exactly am I doing here, and what do you think I should be bringing to the situation of the organization. Show appreciation. Many times leaders show appreciation to followers, but oftentimes followers may not necessarily show the level of appreciation required for their leader. Something that you can do. Remember, positive reinforcement of each other is always going to be a good thing. Keeping the leader informed, that's important, because the leader is only as good as the information that he has available, and followers tend to be at the forefront, or at the so let's say the battle lines where decisions are going to be necessary, and therefore they need to be informed, or keep the leader informed of what's happening at all times. The last one is also a really important responsibility. If you see leaders doing wrong things, then you have to not only resist the influence of the leader to also do those things, but to help him correct his or her behavior. All right, resist and correct inappropriate behaviors of leaders. A lot of leaders don't like this. They don't like the critical thinking individuals around them, because it challenges their authority, and that to me is a sign of poor leadership. If all you want around you is yes men, then that's not the kind of leadership I would like to follow. And unfortunately, from experience, from my experiences, I should say, a lot of our political leaders want that type of they don't want these types of followers. They want more of the followers who are more sheep oriented. So these are the competencies that would give rise to those sort of rules that we talked about before. Displaying loyalty, very a normal thing. I mean, you want to be loyal. You don't want to just be jumping ship all the time. Functions well in change environments. So able to navigate change quickly and work well with others. That functions on teams well, because again, collectively we are smarter than any individually. Thinks independently and critically. As I said before, this is a competency for followers, but it's not often encouraged by leaders, and considers integrity of paramount importance. Obviously, if you have this competency of high levels of integrity, you're going to insist upon it up, from the leader that you're working with. And that's an important element, because again, integrity means that what you do and what you say is consistent across the board, and you expect that your leader is a reflection of that as well. You don't want to be working with somebody who is a bit of a flake, and vacillates between one position to another, and at the end of the day, kind of like you get looking like a fool at the end of the day. You know what that brings to mind? You remember all these press secretaries that President Trump went through during his period as president, and Trump would make all these tweets and statements to the public, and these people would have to come and defend that in front of the media. It used to tell me, as a follower, and they have to toe this line that agrees with with President Trump. But and if you do anything that was opposed to what he was saying, you pretty much lose your job, which is why he went through so many different press secretaries in his lifespan there. It was amazing to see the amount of spin doctoring that was going on back then. It was amusing when it started, and then it just got annoying, especially during the COVID situations that they had all those mishaps taking place there. All right. Now, if those are all the things we talked about with followers, do you think the term follower is the best name to give those types of individuals? Any of you all have a suggestion of what you might like to call somebody who is in an organization with you as a leader? Or if you are in an organization, would you prefer to be called a follower? What give me something else that you might prefer to hear? Anybody? Me ask Nyla. It's modest.
I would just say a member. I don't know.
Number. All right. Anybody else has an idea? That's not a bad thing. Yeah. The whole concept with this is that you wanna followers sounds derogatory in the sense that it diminishes the role that you have. So think about member. Yes, that's good. One that I've heard utilized is associate. So this is the Speaker of the House, and these are my associates, so on, so on, so. They are your followers, but if you refer to them as associates, they feel more like um, peer level influencers with you, or people at your same level who you respect and you value their input and that type of stuff. So those are the things that you want to pay attention to. That's possibly another way. Now, another model here that looks at followers' behaviors now is when you get involved with organizations, you either fall into one of these 5 areas here. Now, what you're looking at is the level of critical thinking and your level of activity, being active to passive. So let's look at the sheep, which a lot of political parties prefer to have most of their membership to fall into the category of sheep or yes people. Sheep is they will do the minimum without thinking about it. They're unable to think critically, highly dependent upon the leader for decision making, and very passive in their activities. Yes, people, another set, same thing, unable to think critically, highly dependent on the leader to make decisions, but are very active in the organization. You see these guys, they're the I want to say these guys, people really, they're the activists that run around and tell you have to vote for this and this person, and you have to give them a support, and they're very active in trying to get you into getting involved with this particular person. Then, as opposed to that, you have the effective follower, who is independent and critical thinker and highly active. Now, again, you want these types of individuals, but they are very difficult to manage because everything you say and decisions that you make, they will question it because they are critical thinkers. And if they don't agree with what you have to say, then they will eventually leave because um, the simple thing about this is that they will eventually, if they are not listened to and they're not given um, voice to their opinions, they will cease acting and move across to being alienated. If they stay in your organization at all, they could just very well just walk out. And a lot of, I know, for example, if I have been in any political situations, I am pretty alienated as a follower, but I'm not in any political organization. But I could see myself falling into an alienated follower. I wouldn't, I think critically about what's going on, but I'm not going to lend my support to it. And then, of course, you have survivors who kind of move between these fields of sheep to yes person to effective to alienated, and it's kind of like a cycle that we run through over time. If you've ever become involved in any sort of group activity and you're the leader or you're a follower or an associate in those organizations, try and think about where you are in 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 that organization in terms of this matrix here that this Kelly's speaks about here in their model. All right, leadership styles now. So followers have leaders, and these are the styles that they're going to look at. And we're going to look at these in a lot more detail later on. So we have the classical approaches to leadership, laissez-faire, autocratic, participative. Those are the classic approaches, the XY theory, that type of stuff. Most of you all here who've done management studies would have come across the X and Y theories of leadership, um, hopefully. Situational leaders where, or styles where the style is totally dependent upon the situation you find yourself. Emergent leaders are leaders who are kind of in training and they emerge out of organizations. Transactional leadership style is one where we do trade-offs. If you do this, I will do that. That type of stuff. That kind of transformational thing, transactional thing. Transformational leadership is one where the leader tries to inspire people to make change, positive change in organizations, and that's a very strong type of leadership style. It requires a lot of persuasion and a lot of motivation. And visionary leadership style is one where you're only focused on the future. And visionary leadership styles tend can become alienated because they're so focused on the future that they're not concerned about the present, and that can be problematic for a lot of people. All right, so these are the styles that you'll move through when you're engaging in activities. So as a definition, any person can be a leader as long as they are actively engaged with others to try and make some sort of change. So it could be anything. It could be this classroom, it could be home, where you're doing things in your communities, at your job, and in the wider environment that you get involved in. What are the functions of the or the purpose of leadership? Leadership is meant to motivate. We talked about that before. Attain their organizational goals, because if you're part of an organization and you're not achieving their goals, then you're not a successful leader. Ensure that the rules that govern your activities are adhered to. Um, that's something that some leaders like to move around. They make rules as they go. Provide continuity and momentum. So yes, you want to continue. Continuity is to connect to the past leaders or the past of the organization and create the momentum and the need to keep on moving forward. Because if you stay stagnated, then you're likely going to become irrelevant in the spectrum of where you're operating. Embrace and foster change. That has to do with momentum. It is part of the leader has to lead by example by fostering change and embracing change. You can't be telling people we need to change and you're not willing to do it yourself. They need to act upon the common good. The common good means that you put your own selfish needs aside and you look at what is best for everybody in the organization. You want to be behaving socially responsibly. You want to engage in civic engagement. That sounds really weird, but you want to as you have to engage in civic activities, which means civic engagement, and display civic responsibility. Now, we're going to clarify some of those things. So social responsibility we talked about already. It's your commitment as an individual and as a leader or follower to make sure what you do is for the well-being of everybody. All right, everybody in your immediate circle, the world in which we operate, and we're looking to do things for the good of everybody. That's why they refer to it as the public good. Civic engagement is a heightened sense of responsibility for all of the communities that you're involved in. And to engage in that, these are some of the things we're talking about here. So all of the communities we're talking about, your work, your social environment, your family environment, and the community that you live in. So we're talking about things like volunteerism, participating in community activities like, I don't know, any of you all went to a beach cleanup or helped to develop something in your community to help make it better for your people living in and around you. You want to be able to get involved with civil society, politics. Now, a lot of people don't like that because politics has such negativity attached to it. Somebody had their hand up. So
I was just going to comment about I did have some voluntary work when I was in Form 6. And
all right.
We did beach cleanups and things like that.
Right, I remember doing that. Do you know that there's volunteerism available in Costa?
Well, I haven't been able to access it as yet. It's my second year, so I might look into it this year.
Check it out. Social Services sends out student emails looking for people to volunteer. Recently, they were looking for people to volunteer for the upcoming Easter cycling event. They were looking for people to volunteer to work with the Carifta, I think it is.
Well, I will look at it. I think I saw the email, but I just glanced it. I didn't really.
Mm-hmm. We also have internal volunteerism for ambassadors and um, so sometimes, like right now, we're on recruitment drives with students around the country, and we sometimes like to take students along with us as examples or as peers who can speak to students in small groups from other schools or different schools around Trinidad and Tobago and encourage them to, participate in coming to Costa and sharing the vision kind of thing, right? All right, so those are some of the things about civic engagement, getting engaged with your community, and trying to make your community a better place. Civic responsibility, the sense of personal responsibility that an individual should feel to uphold their obligation of part of our community. And community is not just only where you live, but also the wider community and the country. So some of the things we talk about there. The one I like to focus on is obeying the law. How many of us, for those of you who drive, how many of you all actually maintain the speed limit when you're driving? Or do you drive around and place mad like that? Going to school is actions required by law. Jury duty. I've never, well, because I'm classified as a teacher, I won't be eligible to do jury duty. Maybe when I retire, that will happen. Paying taxes, I do that every month, right? But there are lots of people who avoid paying taxes. So Ms. DeLeon, for example, I can ask, do you pay taxes on the income that you earn from the sales of those goods? Don't answer that, okay? Because that's prosecutable. but if you set up a business, you ought to be able to know that you should be paying taxes on any incomes earned beyond certain levels, right? So these are the actions that we start talking about in terms of being socially responsible, volunteering for community service, voting. We don't do this one in Trinidad, serving in the military. Any of you all took part in things like the cadets or Girl Scouts or brownies, that kind of stuff when you were coming up in primary schools? Or secondary?
Primary school, brownie. Yeah, primary school.
So I was a member of the cadet force for a while when I was in secondary school. I know my younger brother was a scout. My older brother actually is still involved to a great extent. His wife is the trying to think, she's a bigwig in the Girl Guides Association. Um, whole set of stuff. Displaying patriotism. That's a big problem in Trinidad. How many of you all have a Trinidadian flag at home? Hmm. De Leon, you have one? Why do you have a flag?
No, I don't think. Well, I mean, my
you know, the hard part is, Miss De Leon, I shouldn't need to be asking you that flag. Everybody should have a Trinity flag home. Um, when you go abroad and you meet Trinidadians, you'd see, just like the Americans have flags all over the place, you'll see a Trinidadian flag there. You know why? They've come to understand the power of patriotism. Because when something goes wrong, you pull out your flag and you go down and you support. When things go right, you pull out your flag and you go down and you support. It doesn't matter. Patriotism is patriotism across the board, good and bad times. But here in Trinidad, the only time we're patriotic is when we have fete and when we win. If we lose, tough luck. Right? That actually is a level of social apathy that is worrisome about us here. All right, leadership and learning. Now, the question here is, should a leader know everything? No, that is not reasonable. Leaders can't know everything. Nobody can know everything, which means, therefore, that, and the hard part about it, there's some leaders who pretend to know everything. And that's a dangerous leader because that means they're engaging in deception because they view that their lack of knowledge is weakness. But understandably, your lack of knowledge is not weakness. It's expected. You can't know everything about everything. I mean, it's impractical and impossible. So that means leaders have to be open to learning. And we have to also remember that even though I may not know something or you may not know something as a leader, somebody else in your organization may know about it. That thus, if we work together with other people, we'll have a bigger base of understanding and knowledge. Now, it means, therefore, that we have to have some level of openness to learning, and the 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 leader is responsible for communicating that type of environment to everybody else. If you see me as a leader engaging in my own research and activities to pull things together, understand concepts, understand new technology and whatnot, then you're not going to be you're not going to be discouraged to go and do it on your own, and also I'm not going to be, if you make mistakes, I'm not going to be ridiculing you or firing you or something like that. Those are things that you try to create in the environment that you're working in, so that you are able to encourage people to want to learn, and more importantly, for other people to share the knowledge that they have about the things that you may not have. Because that's another thing that some leaders like to do. They like to hold on to leadership, to information as a form of control. Information is power, so to speak. And that's true, information is power. But sharing that knowledge, it doesn't make you less powerful, but it makes you more effective if you share that power and share that knowledge, both as a leader and as a follower. But some people believe that is not a good thing. And the type of organization that you want to set up, it should be one in which you encourage people to constantly learn, which means we want to create the situation of lifelong learners. So this learning model is one here that the text refers to in terms of a learning model that we want to have available in any organization. So what you can do is a function of your will, your capability, and your focus. Now, your will is your desire. Your capabilities are those skills that you have, and your focus is the ability to put your desire and your skills together and focus it on getting those. So let's think about something practical. Like, okay, so maybe you want to learn to play the guitar, or you want to put together a band, which is another type of organization. So you have people who are willing to participate. Do they have the capacity or the capability? So you have to gather those people around who have the capability or are willing to learn um, the skills necessary, and you focus all your attention or all your efforts on getting it, and therefore you can create a band. But if you just kind of like only have two out of the three, you can't do anything. You have to have all three. So in the learning model that they're referring to here, you must have focus, well, willingness, capacity, and focus to be able to get things done. Another model here is one that you should be familiar with, where you have this circular technique here of of what's happening. So you have conceptualization of a concept, you put it into practice, you take from that practice the experience, reflect upon it, the outcomes here, make some sort of assessment, reconceptualize it, and put it through this churn again. Okay, and then eventually, through this process, you will develop theory, and that theory will then be applied in the wider world. Now, any of you all ever came across this methodology before? And I use that word as a hint. This is known as the scientific method. You all know that, right? It's how any subject becomes a science. You have an idea, which is create a theory or a hypothesis, set up the test to see if that hypothesis works or is true, and then you swing back around, gather data from the experiment, reflect upon that data, evaluate the data, make a critical assessment of it, and if the assessment is incorrect, then you go back to the conceptualization, start again, and go through the process. If, however, it is correct, then you can move to the part of contributing to existing theory, and that theory is then applied in the real world around us. That should be familiar with anybody who did social sciences or is doing hard sciences. That's the scientific process of moving from ideas to hypothesis to theory. Make sense? All right. So the issue is that utilizing those approaches, what we find is that the best organizations that people have experienced working in are those companies that encourage lifelong learning. So like, for instance, I could tell you my journey with Costat has been one of constantly learning. When I was initially introduced in the 90s to the concept of the community college, when we started in 2000, and I shifted across from Ministry of Education to teaching here in Costat on a full-time basis, and it was really wonderful. And we even recently we've been doing um, studies, and we during the vacation period that you guys are off, we are in classrooms getting work done. Um, the last major set of training that we went through was in the transition we had for the pandemic to move from face-to-face classes to fully online classes. That was a lot of training, and it keeps on going. And what happens is that that type of environment has contributed to the ability for me to just, instead of waiting for the college to mount training, I go and look for training on my own. I do a lot of my own learning on through observing, looking at YouTube, and finding other sources of data, reading texts and so on, and trying to learn on my own. And that actually is a value system that I would encourage any organization to push everybody into. Now, another strong element that comes up is to use your experience to learn. And in fact, the way in which we learn is always going to be through that experiential system where we either do something or we think about something and then put it into a process. Now, the process that we're talking about is this one here. You can see it very quickly here. You have an abstract conceptualization, some idea or concept. You experiment with that idea. That develops from an experiment into a concrete experience. You reflect upon that experience and then you start back again with the abstraction. But the circle may not, the circle does not necessarily stay at the same level. Because when you go through the process once, you learn something about it from your previous experience and then it cycles outwards and it kind of spirals outwards because experiential learning is sort of like levels upon levels upon levels. How many of you all here ever did a learning preference style evaluation? You all did? You all ever did that before?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
As the VARC test. Now, just for your information, it's available here on the e-classroom. In the event that you haven't done it, but if you haven't done it in the last year or so, you should go back and do it. Learning styles inventories here. Understanding how you best you learn is always going to be a good starting point to evaluate who you are as an individual, because it shows your preference and how I like to learn. So at the end of the day, as a leader, you want to create a situation where you encourage all forms and types of learning, and every type of learning is valuable, especially experiential learning or learning from experience. So, so that brings us to the end of our thing, and I'd like to close off now and reiterate now what we're looking at here, that leadership is a role open to anybody. It is living by a personal set of rules in which you motivate others to do the right thing, be engaged in the world, and to listen to others and their concerns. Leadership is focused on the other purpose, on the other person. So this is a quotation from the text from Chandra Johnson, and I found it embodied specifically what the approach of this model is going to be, because it's not about only you and developing your skills as a leader, but it's also about developing your understanding of the need to develop very good relationships with the people who are going to be in your organization. And it means that everybody is potentially a leader, which brings us to this quotation here. Everybody is a leader because everybody influences somebody. Even if you think you're not influencing people, you have to be careful, because everything you do around young people in particular, they're looking at you and you're going to influence somebody. Everybody can influence others, and that is why you're a leader, especially when you become parents. All right. So, and I like this one here. Leadership is not the privilege of the few. You and I can be and should be leaders. So it means, and I love this penguin situation there. This is really cool, because what they do, and the reason why they have the penguins. Any of you all looked at the March of the Penguins, the documentary, not the film? Well, basically, the guy at the front, they always take turns, because remember, the one in the front is the one who's kind of leading the way, but they always take turns in leadership positions in this. That's probably why they use the penguins thing, because everybody's following this leader here. And he's facing the brunt of it, or she, or whoever it is, facing the brunt of the weather in front of everybody else. All right, any questions that you want to ask of me about the content that we looked at so far? No? Everything's clear? All right, so what's going to happen is, in the next two chapters, one, we're going to review. In chapter 2, we're going to be looking at the history of leadership and leadership studies. And in chapter 3, we're going to delve deeper into examining the relational leadership model. Now, those are heftier chapters. They are a lot more dense, so we're going to have a lot more um, concepts to be looking at. So I'd like you to, if you can, go to the e-classroom, download the PowerPoints that I have there, and have a look at them before, so that you're not going to be hit with a lot of brand new information at any point in time. All right, that makes sense, guys. All right, so I know we are at almost 5:30. So if there are no questions, let me stop the recording, and I will post these as soon as they process. I'll post them on the e-classroom.